like it.
And I'm hoping she comes. I can see she comes down to our ice cream social.
Yeah.
And I may bring my 86-year-old neighbor. I may bring her.
Okay.
If she thinks, because I saw her walking around the neighborhood today, and she looked tired. I almost said, "Oh, no, go home. It's too hot for you to be walking." Her kids have taken her car. And
Oh.
so I think she's going to
I was just saying, like,
Yeah, poor
But I
baby.
talked to Lisa.
you
Lisa
might
told
look
me
it up,
I
remember
can take
that
her mama anywhere,
as
she
like
trusts her with me,
living,
don't worry.
that way,
And I feel like I'll call and say, look, just gonna take her Saturday,
when
if
you're
she's
riding
not
to
home.
work.
Yeah.
But I don't know how
We can
well.
just
I'm
continue.
hoping
You're
she
gonna
will.
work so hard and not work.
She
Oh,
will
yeah.
take you for
Yeah.
years. And she's sharper than any others that I know right
Yeah.
now. And I know she would like to do.
I know. I went up last week to see my dad and to take him to the doctor.
Like, I will literally.
Only he wound up driving to the doctor because he wanted me to watch him and observe him drive
Do you do
to
Aw,
see
did
if
he
he.
do it?
Yeah, he did good.
Yeah.
And
I
so
wanted
he's,
to call him today, but I forgot.
And how
yeah,
old is your dad?
he's 95.
And he drove himself to the doctor.
Yeah.
That's pretty
Oh
phenomenal.
yeah, it was a big deal, man. He got
And how
himself
far-
over the bridge.
Yeah, like, yeah. I was gonna say, what was the trip like?
It's
I mean, was
it's
it,
about.
I mean, is it dangerous for him to be on the road without good reflexes?
Well, no, because he's found a back way over.
That's what I was fixing to say.
So, in fact, if he's got there's intersections that he doesn't want to turn left at,
Yeah.
he'll go down, make the block
Okay.
around, turn
See, my
right.
dad was doing that because my dad has enough wherewithal to know that he said my reflexes aren't good and I don't need to be on the road. But he wanted to drive where he could.
Yeah,
But he knew there's some things I don't need to do.
right. Well, that was Daddy's fear, but I said, you drive as good as me.
Yeah.
So,
And if he keeps taking the right turns, then he's not really at a lot of risk.
yeah.
If he's found a way to, back roads and stay that way.
Okay, we're in chapter 39.
What are we doing?
Oh, man, 9 months and we're only into 39.
We're having a baby.
Did you say what I'm going to do when it's over?
Yeah.
Are we just going on to Exodus?
Might just do that. Might as well
Yeah.
just go through the Pentateuch.
That
Take
sounds good.
5 years to do it.
Oh, I thought it
And
At
then,
this
and
rate.
then you'll have your, who was it the other day? Oh, you'll have your
Jude.
5-year plan. But we were watching somebody the other night and they said,
You
all these young people want to make a 5-year plan. They don't need to do that. Life's going to do it for them.
That's right. That's right.
So that could be our 5-year plan, but it might not work.
Yeah. One of ours, Zach, he's got a 25-year plan.
A 25-year plan.
Yeah, he's got it all worked out. Yeah.
And probably
Exactly.
don't do that. And it's
That's
not
a
25-year.
Yeah.
Get freaked out if it doesn't
Don't
go
do that.
last more life.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's the
sorry.
problem,
Put
is
that.
when it doesn't go that way.
No
There's,
longer,
They
no
don't know
premarital
how
life
to-
option.
They don't
Yeah.
know- They don't know how to veer off their plan.
Yep. Oh, goodness. All right, so we're in Potiphar's house. And things look like it's going good for Joseph, and then all of a sudden, it's not. And there's some key words that we find all the way through this chapter, all the way through 41 actually. They kind of help set the stage. But we have here in this little episode with Potiphar's wife, we have a juxtaposition. And this is what Robert Alder believes about the chapter we just went through, chapter 38 with Tamar. He believes that these two chapters together make a unit that juxtapose the sexual prowess of these women and how it's used differently to one in an accomplishment to actually preserve the line of Judah, which would have been lost without her. And then Potiphar's wife, of course, is its total power over. So they both exhibit power, one negative, one positive. So I thought that was interesting. I didn't want to forget to make that remark because
That is
That
interesting.
was when I read Robert Alter. That was like mind blowing when he explained all that.
Yeah.
It was like it was right at the beginning of his book, and it's like I have no idea what this is about, and it's just like
yeah, and we talked about it last week as the injustice that had been done to Tamar through her neglect, and then ultimately deceiving Judah which got her what she needed, but also got Judah what he needed, which is the secure of his line. He wouldn't have had an heir without her.
And God was in all of it, no matter
Right.
who was doing right.
Right. And then that is placed against the deception that Judah performed against his father concerning Joseph. So we've got this cascading thing of deception. That is also what Potiphar's wife does. And like you just said, in all of it, we have God working through it. So the broad lesson is what? No matter how bad we mess it up,
God's will's going to win.
he's got other stuff going on that we can't even find until it's over. Yeah. So we're keep our eyes open for those things
It was
as
bad.
we move through.
Yeah.
3 words.
Yeah. Yeah.
So 30 now. Now, the word now. Here we have. We change the scene with the word now almost every time. Now Joseph went down to Egypt. Had been taken into Egypt. So he's in his little own mini exile. An Egyptian named Potiphar, an officer at Pharaoh and the captain of the guard, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him there. You remember that whole story. Okay. And then we have this one line that reassures the Israelite reader at the time what's going on in the background. So the reader has a better perspective than the characters in the midst of the story, because he says the Lord was with Joseph. Nobody knows that but us. We're the only ones, the people that are able to read it. And so there's this, it's like throwing a warm blanket over the whole thing. You're about to enter some rough waters, but just know that the Lord's with Joseph. And it doesn't always appear that that's going to be the case, but he is. And he became a successful man, serving in the household of his Egyptian master. When his master saw that the Lord was with him, okay, the master recognizes something that no one else does, okay, and that the Lord made everything he did successful. Joseph found favor with his master and became his personal attendant. Now, does this master know anything about Yahweh as God? No. This is the reader absorbing this from the perspective of a Hebrew writer. He's telling them this.
Did see something in him. Yeah.
Saw something in Joseph.
Yeah.
He wouldn't identify it as Yahweh
Right.
being with
Yeah,
Joseph,
he just
but
knew
he
he was a good guy.
but he said, "Yeah, this is an exceptional guy," and the writer gives credit of that to God. Yeah. So Joseph found favor in his master and became his personal attendant. Potiphar also put him in charge of his household. And let me scroll up here. And all that he owned. The Lord blessed the Egyptian's house because of Joseph. So here we have, now back home, what's going on? Remember, there's grieving. I mean, Jacob is grieving because he's lost his son.
And this has been years, though.
Yeah, but we're reminded of the grief because remember it says it's never ending. It's overwhelming. The idea that's communicated there is that Jacob is never going to get over this. Okay, so here we have Jacob in grief, and Potiphar is blessed. Yeah, and in both cases, God is going to use this entire extended thing to keep his program in place of blessing all the nations through Jacob's sons. He left all that he owned under Jacob's authority. He did not concern himself with anything except the food he ate, which means he had a food taster. He said he could trust Jacob with everybody, but he still had somebody tasting his food. So now Joseph was.
That's how so many of them were killed, though.
Oh yeah, it was the way. That was the easiest way to.
Yeah. Cupbearer, my bread taster first before I eat it.
And the Egyptians were world famous probably for their ability to use pharmaceuticals. Now Joseph was well built and handsome. Walter Brueggemann contrasts this description to David when we first introduced to David. He's not handsome, that kid. In fact, he's described as the scruffiest little, the youngest, almost the run of the litter type description. So I don't know why Brueggemann brings it up. Really, he just does.
Yeah, because toward the end of David's reign, though, he does become more.
Well, when Micah sees him
Yeah.
the first time, there's this hint that that's a really attractive guy,
Yeah.
and then he blows it dancing naked in front of everybody. Everybody thinks she thinks she's crazy, and everybody else thinks he lost his mind.
When they first found David, he was still so young
Yeah, he
and
was.
everything. He was a kid,
Yeah.
and so there's a lot of changes that a kid goes
Oh,
through
yeah.
before they become an adult.
Yeah.
So, but Joseph, I think by this time was probably, because wasn't he
He was already
15,
past his
16 or
teenager.
something? Yeah.
He'd be in his 20s by now.
Before
Yeah.
the brothers
he's in
got
his-
him, and so
right.
he's probably an older guy now.
So it says, after some time, his master's wife looked longingly. I like the way that they seductively would be a better word today.
Yeah.
At Joseph and said,
Wrongly.
yeah,
Yes, Mark.
yeah. And so she says, what? Sleep with me or lie with me. Okay. But he refused. Look, he said to his master's wife, with me here, my master does not concern himself with anything in his house, and he has put all that he owns under my authority. So, or under, what's the word, remember? Hand. Yeah. Which is really great here. We got to watch the word hand. So he says he's put everything under my hand. No one in this house is greater than I am. He has withheld nothing from me except you, meaning that his hand has given me everything except you. All right? Because you are his wife. So how could I do this immense evil, and how could I sin against God? Now, that seems a little bit out of place, him talking about his God in the midst of this scene. But it is here for the reader, certainly, to understand that Joseph was recognizing that the uniqueness of his abilities was coming from outside himself, and that God was blessing him.
And maybe he was attempting evangelism.
Yeah, well, yeah, maybe so. But
Here, let me tell you about the three circles right here.
well, we know there's not a real clear-cut understanding of what adultery accomplishes. Okay, so can that be what he's talking about? I think what he's talking about more than anything is that the authority that he's been given has its limits. And so to move beyond those limits would be evil. So it's a matter of his integrity as a ruler more than it is the idea of adultery or having another man's
He's
wife,
just
because
showing her there are rules.
Yeah.
And I'm a leader, but I'm going to obey the
yeah,
rules too.
yeah. But he's following them based on his own integrity of authority.
Yeah.
If Potiphar would have said, "Oh, and yeah, by the way, if you want to live with my wife, go ahead," it would have been a different story. So the writer's given us this image of Joseph of an upstanding guy. So he's been thrown into prison and he was sold into slavery, simply because he shared a dream. He was not doing anything other than repeating really what had been given to him, and it gets him sold. And here, out of a place of authority, he's exercising really the same kind of integrity. Although when we see him talking about the dreams with his brother, we do imagine it's arrogance. Okay? Because what's the result? His brothers hate him. So his father loves him, his brother hates him. And there we have those two words. And here we're going to have the word hand, and then let's find our second word. Although she spoke to Joseph day after day, he refused to go to bed with her. So this is an everyday thing. This woman's relentless. Now one day he went into the house to do his work, and none of the household servants were there. So he broke the Billy Graham rule.
But do you
Yeah.
think he knew that?
No.
If she ran my office and
No.
out of here, I know what I'm going to do.
That's right. She grabbed him she laid her hand upon him and grabbed him by his garment and said, "Sleep with me," with an exclamation point. But leaving his garment in her hand, he escaped and ran outside. So see, he's got the power. Okay, his hand of authority is on everything, but ultimately her hand on his clothes winds up being the greater power in this particular instance. And had run outside. She called to her household servants. "Look," she said to them, "my husband brought a Hebrew man to make fools of us. He came to me so he could sleep with me, and I screamed as loud as I could." Okay, that's a big lie.
Yeah, that's why we all came running, because we heard you screaming.
When he heard me screaming for help, he left his garment beside and ran outside. So it said, all right, so get this, day after day is the way that this whole scene is blocked. So everybody around her would have had to have been deaf and dumb to believe what she says. But what are they doing?
They're believing.
Yeah, because she's got power. She's got her hand now on Joseph, but in a very negative way. She put Joseph's garments beside her until his master came home. Then she told him the same story. "The Hebrew slave you brought to us came and made a fool of me, but when I screamed for help, he left his garment beside me and ran outside." She left out the part where, yeah. When his master heard the story, his wife told him, "These are the things your slave did to me." He was furious. And he had him thrown into prison, where the king's prisoners were confined. So we had now at the beginning, and here we have so at the end. It's like quotation marks. So Joseph was there in prison.
So one thing about the narrative with that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Another thing I remember Alter saying was how you have two repetitions of the same story, right?
Yes.
But if you look really closely the second time, like when she tells it to the husband instead of the people, like the other slaves that were there, she changes some things. So she says, the Hebrew servant that you brought.
Yeah.
And it's I can almost read in there kind of like a frustration that she has with her husband about this Hebrew, or just like this small thing that she gets more terse with what she says. And he points all out to say that like there's really beautiful depth that Hebrew writer putting into like every like word. Like, it's so intentional with the way he's telling the story.
And the other thing is, in that, and Brugman brings this out a little bit, is that Potiphar is made responsible for her temptation.
Yeah.
And so he is getting the blame, and all of this is subterfuge. None of it's true.
Yeah.
But yet, so now Joseph's a victim, and so is Potiphar, and really the people in the household, because they're going along with it. They know better. And we're not told that directly, but day after day she's done this.
Oh,
See?
yeah, they know.
Yeah, so she's managed, in the family system, she's the one controlling the whole thing. She's got control over everything. And Joseph winds up in prison. So he goes from the highest of highs, nearly the highest of highs, to the lowest of lows, just
back
like
to
that.
square one.
Yeah, and you're right. When the writer repeats a story and they change words or leave things out, you got to look for what's left out, and you got to look at why the change, and we learn a lot more about what's going on.
The story's so. Okay, I remember a Hebrew professor saying like, if you wrote on this in like academia today, like the real like power rate that's here, like from a woman to a man, like it's so against the narrative of like today's culture.
Yeah, and you know what? I was trying to think of a movie that was made years ago. It had Demi Moore and...
Oh, the $1 Million Bet or something like that?
Well, no, not that one. But she's the power. She's the boss. And she tries to seduce her underworker. He worked for her, and somehow or another... his phone had recorded the whole thing at the end, and that was the end of the suspense. He turned it in, and he saved his job, and she got fired, and and all of that business. And it is the same kind of story. Falsely accused. She accused him of trying to get her, and yeah, same kind of story. In fact, you could read this story and look at that movie and think, oh, this was the idea for the screenplay.
And when he was younger, he ended up in a bad place, but that kind of was because of some stuff he did. He didn't bring it on himself, but if he hadn't been the tattletale and hadn't been telling everybody about the dreams, and this was not because of anything he did. He was trying to do the right thing, and not have problems with her, but she just kept on, and so now he's ended up in a prison for doing the right thing.
So justice and being treated fairly here has kind of got all turned around. We don't know where to look for what's right. Joseph starts out, he's the tattletale. He's the tattletale, and he kind of flaunts his dream. His brothers wind up hating him. Gets sold into slavery. He rises to the top, and this handsome young man becomes the victim of this woman's wiles, and he falls back down. And you're looking for where's a story like this going?
You got to get to the end.
And we have to get
We have to read to the end.
You have to keep reading.
Yeah.
Because we know where it's going.
Now we're reminded again, but the Lord was with Joseph and extended kindness to him. How does he do that? He granted him favor with the prison warden. So yes, a good guy to be friends with. The warden put all the prisoners who were in the prison under Joseph's authority. So no matter where he is, he's given a hand of authority. And he was responsible for everything that was done there. The warden did not bother with anything under Joseph's authority because, again, the Lord was with him. Everything was going right. The Lord made everything that he did successful. So who's responsible for Joseph's? The Lord is. So everything bad that happens to Joseph is not of the Lord. We're finding that out right now. And so we're never allowed in the story to say that God turned his back. We're reminded all the way through. No, God's taking care of him. Okay, so the only question left is, well, why does he put him in this spot to begin with? And that's the grand 30,000-foot view that we have to have in order to understand exactly what God is up to. So here we go. After this, the king of Egypt's cupbearer and baker offended their master, the king of Egypt, which would be the Pharaoh. Okay, Pharaoh was angry with his two officers, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. Okay, chances are the reason why. Well, why would he be angry with these particular two people? He ate something that made him sick, probably, and he began to suspect their loyalty. So Pharaoh was angry, and he put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guards in the prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guards assigned Joseph to them as their personal attendant, and they were in custody for some time. So Joseph is taking care of them. They're treated as one of the royal house, even though they've offended the Pharaoh. The king of Egypt's cupbearer and baker, who were confined in the prison, each had a dream. Both had a dream on the same night, and each dream had its own meaning. When Joseph came to them in the morning, he saw that they looked distraught. So he asked Pharaoh's officers, who were in custody with him in his master's house, "Why do you look so sad today?" So they're all in custody. These are just fellow inmates talking to each other. "Why are you looking so down today?" He said, "We had dreams," they said to him, "but there is no one to interpret them." So dreams were a big deal.
That's what I was thinking, for them to make a big deal about no one to interpret. We have dreams and who cares?
Yeah.
I know, I'm thinking I need Joseph right now. Where's he at?
They were. Who did they worship? I mean, they worship Ra.
All kinds
Yeah.
of
But their ancestors came into that. So the preservation of life, the embalming, the pyramids, and all of that was a way of staying in constant communication with the past. You were never disconnected. So dreams were the pipeline in a large sense. So they believed that dreams had a significance as being instruction from a world that could see beyond their own. Does that make sense? That's how some people see it today. Some people still do that today. These guys that do the thing where they talk to people from beyond the grave and all that. What was that guy's? Huh?
There's a Netflix show about it.
I'm sure there is. Yeah. I mean, people buy into it totally because they really believe that those folks they can.
That's a gift of the spirit too. That
Yeah.
They interpret dreams or
Yeah.
whatever. They think they have a quote about the dreams.
Yeah. I try not to do anything. Do what?
Dangerous.
Yes, dangerous.
Yeah.
Very dangerous. That's right.
I don't, with what they're fixing to be told, like I said, I'm having dreams, which Joseph was here, but I really don't because
Of what they might be saying.
what that interpretation might be.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear I'm fixing to die soon.
Yeah.
So Joseph, okay, I just kind of gave you a thumbnail sketch of what dreams mean, and Joseph says to them, "Don't interpretations belong to God? So tell me your dreams." So what Joseph is, he's taking control. He's placing his hand of authority over their dreams. Only God is the one that he's holding the authority of. Meaning that this world that they believed in of ancestral and Ra and all of that has no power. Joseph's claiming that God has that power. All right.
So do you think when he says that he knows that God's going to give him those interpretations?
Well, you know what? I don't know, but I would seem to think that for him to open his mouth, that he's had some experience.
He's got lots of years of dealing with all the Egyptians, and Potiphar's home probably no telling what all he has already learned about their culture. You know,
and his interpretation of the other dreams that got him in so much
I
trouble.
was saying that he had dreams when he was young, so he's a
Yeah.
good tasker here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but those dreams he didn't interpret.
Yeah.
Did he really? I mean, he
No,
just said,
he didn't tell them that they were going to bow down, but the
said-
representation was there: the sun, the moon, the 11 stars.
Yeah.
Kind of
Yeah.
obvious what he's talking
You
about.
are talking about us, yeah.
Yeah.
And then the nations bowing down. So he had interpreted all of that rightly, but it had gotten him in a lot of trouble. What I would have done, if I would have interpreted that and it turned out that my brothers hated me and sold me into slavery, I would begin to doubt exactly what I was interpreting.
Are you sure I read that right? God, why am I here?
Yeah.
I'm here, and
Where
what
are
did
you,
I do?
Lord?
But he doesn't. He still has the confidence that these interpretations that he trusts are from God. So he says, "Tell me your dreams." So the chief cupbearer told him his dream to Joseph. "In my dream, there was a vine in front of me. On one vine were three branches. As soon as it budded, its blossoms came out, and its cluster ripens into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes, squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. This is its interpretation," Joseph said to him. 3 branches are 3 days. In just 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your position. You will put Pharaoh's cup in his hand the way you used to when you were his cupbearer. But when all goes well for you, remember that I was with you." Okay? So, "Please show kindness to me by mentioning me to Pharaoh and get me out of this prison." So he says, "Oh, you're my way out of here. For I was kidnapped from the land of the Hebrews." All right? There's that little subtle change you're talking about. He wasn't kidnapped, he was sold. And even here, I have done nothing that they should put me in the dungeon. Now, when the chief baker saw that the interpretation was positive, he said to Joseph, "I also had a dream. 3 baskets of white bread were on my head. In the top basket were all sorts of baked goods for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating them out of the basket on my head." "This is the interpretation," Joseph replied. The 3 baskets are 3 days. In just 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head from off you and hang you on a tree. Then the birds will eat the flesh from your body.
No, thank you.
Thanks for that interpretation.
That's going to be a long 3 days, huh?
Yeah.
So on the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, it's become significant for some reason, he gave a feast for all his servants. He elevated the chief cupbearer and the chief baker among his servants. Pharaoh restored the chief cupbearer to his position as cupbearer, and he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. All right, this is the 3rd time we've heard this repeated, right? So it's got to be true. But Pharaoh hanged the chief baker, just as Joseph had explained to them. Yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph. He forgot him.
I'm hoping those were sequential, where the baker saw the cupbearer get called up, and then had to wait and was like, "Oh,
No, it's coming.
that one was right."
That one was right. This is going to be right. Yeah. So from the reader's point of view, we now know that Joseph is in tune with God on these things. All right. We know it, and at some level, Joseph probably knows it too now. But where is he? With all this great, he's given authority everywhere he goes because of God. He can interpret dreams because of God, and there he is in the prison, languishing away in a dungeon.
What translation is yours?
This is
Mine
Christian
says,
Standard.
When you question where it changed, mine says stolen away from the land, not kidnapped. I'm just wondering. You know.
So
What verse was that?
that was when he tells the
15, yeah. I mean, because you made that kidnapped, and mine,
Yeah.
I'm New King, and it says stolen.
Mine
So-
says stolen too, but I mean, he is kind of right. He was kidnapped. His brothers kidnapped him.
yeah.
He was stolen.
Yeah.
And he was stolen.
Yeah.
He didn't, he
Didn't
wasn't
change-
running.
He didn't change the story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at let's see.
What does the Hebrew say, Harris?
Well, it
That's
says
Paris.
It's
to steal, to
yeah.
deceive. I was deceived in being here.
It's a pretty normal, like, steal word to, like,
Yeah.
the verb form of this, or sorry, the noun form is thief. So it's like thieving. I was thieved
Yeah, I was.
from my land.
Let's see the theological word study Old Testament. I was twice cheated, outwitted. So I don't know.
Outwitted. Yeah, that's
But he leaves out the part that he was sold.
Yeah.
Okay, because what does that do for Joseph? Being justly unjustly dealt with is one thing. Being sold into slavery is another. So it is an attempt to make himself look better, but he doesn't have to.
yeah.
Because being sold is like a normal transaction. Like, that's fair. But
Yeah.
saying you were stolen, yeah, that's wrong.
So this is all about Joseph making himself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's trying to get out of prison.
Yeah, yeah.
So he's looking for every means
This is
necessary to
unjust
do that.
me. Yeah.
Well, all that happens. It's kind of like a lot of stories we've seen already. Why does Abraham pass off Sarah as his sister? It's just another way to kind of keep an upper hand, and so he's looking for that. But we're reminded all the way through the story, God is with him. So it's just kind of a little chink there that says God is with him, but Joseph's still willing to kind of take some of this.
I mean, here we are 2,000 years
Oh,
on the other side.
we are
it was finished at the cross, and we still try to figure it out.
Yeah,
It was finished. It was finished. It was finished.
Yeah, we make a mess of
Yeah.
that
And I
whole
mean,
thing.
he's going to tell them what he wants them to hear too, but I mean, don't they all in prison tell you they didn't do it?
Yeah.
Well,
I
so
didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was not my drugs. That
You know
was
what,
not
you
my
know-
money.
Joseph was right there with them.
That wasn't my pants I had on.
you know what I've discovered though, the ones that are more in tune with their relationship with God are much more honest about their
They're
lives.
owning up to their sin.
They're even ready to whatever penalty comes their way. And it really is amazing for a lot of those guys that find themselves in that position, when their sentence does come or whatever, they're so at peace. They know that it's a place that they've come to, and the worst thing that they can imagine happening is they have to spend more time with God and the Word. And I mean, really. So there are those jailhouse ones that, you know, you get jailhouse religion, and then the minute you walk out the door, it's over. But for a lot of those guys, they're impressive in the way that they approach their relationship with God.
And sometimes it takes bringing them there so they do come to that.
There's 3 or 4 right now. If they walked out today and they wanted to teach a Sunday school class, I'd love it. Yeah, they know their Bible. They've lived every part of what they know to be their faith. I mean, it's, yeah.
And didn't we have that prisoner at the evangelism conference? I can't think of his name. Did you meet him? They're promoting him? I say they. People trying to help him get a job instead of Angola.
Well, I think I got him a job.
But you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
He's a perfect.
Kyle Irwin.
I couldn't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a perfect picture of that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Kyle has, yeah. Not only his degree twice while he was there, he's certified in every DOC faith-based program. He can teach anything. Him and the lady that runs the prisons in the state, she's helping decorate the house that he's living in. That's the kind of guy he is.
And he's got his knees fixed or whatever.
Yeah.
He was having trouble with
He was
his
having
health.
trouble with the knee replacement that he had. No, I hope that by the end of next week, the sheriff's announcing that he's going to be doing our reentry program, our faith-based reentry program.
That's awesome.
Yeah, many days of prayer for that.
Yes. Come to pass.
I'm excited.
Contact Prison Fellowship and be like, what the hell, guys?
Well, look, he's
involved?
dear friends with the guy that from Baylor University that wrote a faith-based reentry program, who was going to come help get it started.
Wow.
We couldn't have asked for anything better.
So
I
he'll be
mean,
employed by the sheriffs? Or how
probably as a contract worker. I don't think they can employ him as an employee because he's got a record. I think there's statutes
That's
about
what I mean, that he'll be like a vendor, that they'll pay. They're the ones who will pay him.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. I was wondering where was the
Yeah.
financing going to come to.
Yeah.
this job.
And he will also, if it all goes right, he will also do the parallel track with the families. And then during that time, we're going to train mentors to take over after the 12 weeks. And so, yeah, we'll do 12 at a time. I'm excited. Yeah.
So he's got to get involved with the people getting jobs.
Do what?
He's got to get involved to help, with other people to help get them jobs.
Yeah, that's right. It's going to be a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
I think the sheriff's going to love it. I think it's one day. I don't know what day. I think Tuesday. Ben's trying to set that up. Yeah, be praying about that.
Yes. That's going to be awesome.
Because we've been struggling with this since COVID, and we thought we had everything that was going to be
It was
perfect,
moving forward.
and that pales now to what God's put together in all this. Casa wants to train our mentors, and they've got really good training. And there's another group that works with My Community Cares that does a mentoring thing. And
So
yeah,
just putting everything in place for it to be a
Yeah.
success. That's why we had COVID.
That's exactly it.
oh, and then if we can get the other thing hired with the foster care,
That's going to happen.
we're gonna have
It should all start working.
it'll all be
properly.
firing on.
4 cylinders.
Yeah,
8
for the kids involved in all of this. See.
Yeah, be praying about October 3rd for that.
Yep.
That's the big night of discussion.
Okay. All right. At the end of 2 years, Pharaoh had a dream. So
There's more time.
2 more years.
interesting that they have this 2 years. He was standing beside the Nile when 7 healthy-looking, well-fed cows came up from the Nile and began to graze among the reeds. After them, 7 other cows, sickly and thin, came up from the Nile and stood beside those cows along the bank of the Nile. The sickly, thin cows ate the healthy, well-fed cows. Yeah, we did something. Then Pharaoh woke up. He fell asleep and dreamed a second dream. 7 heads of grain, plump and good, came up on one stalk. After them, 7 heads of grain, thin and scorched by the east wind, sprouted up. The thin heads of grain swallowed up the 7 plump, full ones. Then Pharaoh woke up, and it was only a dream. I like that line. Ooh, boy! Thank goodness some cows didn't show up eating other cows. When the morning came, he was troubled. So there's that word, troubled, again. So he summoned all the magicians of Egypt and all its wise men. Pharaoh told him his dreams, but no one could interpret them for him. So here we have this failing system of spirituality that can't help him at all. Then the chief cupbearer said to Pharaoh, "Today I remember my faults." Pharaoh was angry with his servants and put me and the chief baker in the custody of the captain of the guards. He and I had dreams on the same night. Each dream had its own meaning. Now, see that word now? Now we're shifting focus away from Pharaoh to this young Hebrew. A slave of the captain of the guards was with us there. We told him our dreams. He interpreted our dreams for us and each had its own interpretation. It turned out just the way he had interpreted them to us. I was restored to my position and the other man was hanged. So there's proof that he was pretty good at what he does. Then Pharaoh sent for Joseph, and they quickly brought him from the dungeon. He shaved, changed his clothes, and went to Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I had a dream, and no one can interpret it. But I have heard it said about you that you can hear a dream and interpret it. I am not able to do so." That's a brave thing to say, huh?
Talk fast with that next sentence.
Yeah. It is God who will give Pharaoh a favorable answer. So interesting, he doesn't give it to Joseph. He gives it to the one that had the dream. Joseph's just there as a servant, just passing through. So Pharaoh said to Joseph, "In my dream, I was standing on the bank of the Nile, and when 7 well-fed, healthy-looking cows came up from the Nile and grazed among the reeds. After them, 7 other cows, weak and very sickly and thin, came up. I've never seen such sickly ones. All these in all the land, these sickly ones as these in the land of Egypt." So he adds a little emphasis to it there. This is the worst thing he's ever seen. Then the thin, sickly cows ate the first 7 well-fed cows. When they had devoured them, you could not tell that they had devoured them. Their appearance was as bad as it had been before. So that's an added little feature. The sick cows ate the healthy cows, but they still look sick.
No, they didn't say that enough.
They didn't say that the first time around. So why is that? There's more to the story that will help us understand why Joseph becomes more important. Then I woke up. In my dream, I also saw 7 heads of grain, full and good, coming up on one stalk. After then, 7 heads of grain, withered, thin, and scorched by the east wind, sprouted up. The thin heads of grain swallowed the 7 good ones. I told this to the magicians, but no one could tell me what it means. Then Joseph said to Pharaoh, Pharaoh's dreams mean the same thing. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good heads are 7 years. The dream means the same thing. The 7 thin, sickly cows that came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 worthless heads of grain scorched by the east wind are 7 years of famine. It is just as I told Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. 7 years of great abundance are coming throughout the land of Egypt. After them, 7 years of famine will take place, and all the abundance in the land of Egypt will be forgotten. Amen.
Finished for today.
I don't blame you.
Might be somebody bush on that last part.
That's bad back there.
I want to get about a third of the deck to.
Yeah, it's starting. Yeah, I know. We'll have to find. Maybe get Cully over here one day or something, and bush hog it
It's
down.
dry in most of the spots. I found 3.
Yeah.
The iron cuts are doing so.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it, buddy.
Yep.
The famine will devastate the land. The abundance in the land will not be remembered because of the famine that swallows it. For the famine will be very severe. So the 7 years will just be forgotten because it's going to be so bad. Since the dream was given twice to Pharaoh, it means that the matter has been determined by God and he will carry it out soon. So, dread. So now let Pharaoh look for a discerning and wise man and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh do this. Let him appoint overseers over the land and take 1/5 of the harvest of the land of Egypt during the 7 years of abundance. Let them gather all the excess food during these good years that are coming under Pharaoh's authority, store the grain in the cities so that they may preserve it as food. The food will be a reserve for the land during the 7 years of famine that will take place in the land of Egypt. Then the country will not be wiped out by the famine. So not only has he interpreted the dream, he's got a plan. It's like he's done the math. If you keep 1/5 of this for 7 years, you're going to have more than enough. So the proposal pleased the Pharaoh and all his servants. And he said to them, can we find anyone like this, a man who has God's Spirit in him? So we know that they don't have much use for God, especially as it is this way. So this is the Hebrew writer letting us know that God is all over this. He is in control. So Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has made all this known to you, there is no one as discerning and wise as you are. You will be over my house, and all my people will obey your commands. Only I, as king, will be greater than you. So, let's just stop there for a minute.
History repeats itself.
Yeah. Yeah, he's slave, sold into slavery, rises up to second in command in the guard's house, gets accused falsely by Potiphar's wife, goes back to being a prisoner in a dungeon, and waits his time. God blesses him in a way that is significant to really the whole world, what it turns out being. Everyone flocks to Egypt for a little bit of food. And he is again not where he was, but higher than he was. So we've been on this roller coaster ride of exile and some level of fulfillment that God has for him in order for God to carry on with his plan. So Pharaoh removed his signet ring from his hand and put it on Joseph's hand, clothed him with fine linen garments, and placed a gold chain around his neck. So that must have meant everything. That puts him right where he needs to be. He had Joseph ride in his second chariot, and servants called out before him, "Make way!" So he placed him over all the land of Egypt. So that make way.
I love that imagery.
Yeah.
Bow the knee.
Bow the knee is what I have.
Yeah.
Bow the knee.
Yeah. Which is it's really the same language that Isaiah uses, talking about preparing the way. It's the same deal to bow the knee.
He's important, and you
Better pay attention. This is the guy now. So he placed him all over all the land of Egypt. Pharaoh said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and no one will be able to raise his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt without your permission. Pharaoh gave Joseph the name, somebody else say it.
Zaphenath-Paneah.
There you go. And gave him a wife. Say her name.
Asenath.
Daughter of
Potiphar.
priest of On.
Just go with it. So you have to be confident. If you're just confident, it sounds right.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. He's actually really wrong.
So Joseph married into the religious hierarchy of the land. So he's not only the second most important guy in the land, he's also married into the religious cult. And Joseph went throughout the land of Egypt. So he's gone from being confined in the dungeon to as free as a bird. He can go wherever he wants to go.
And the king Honcho too.
Yeah, goes under the authority of
Be like
Pharaoh.
Whiplash.
Yeah. So, man, you think about that for just a minute. How when God's ready to do something, you better be hanging on, because you don't know how fast and how quick it's going to come.
I just think of going to like holy ground, and just being like, I want to meet someone today, and just walk up to a guy and be like, hey man, what's up, Harris? What's your story? And then it's Joseph.
Yeah.
Like, how do you explain this to somebody? You know? Like,
Yeah, you can't. You say you can't even make that up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I helped out this guy on the side of the road one day, and it happened to be Howard Hughes. And
Kyle Irwin's going to have that story.
oh yeah.
How many people have walked out of Angola? You know. So.
Oh man, you know he's the fourth guy in Angola's history that has offered classes on death row.
Yeah.
Walking around with a TV monitor in his hand so he can teach his classes. I mean, he's got stories.
Yeah.
In fact, when did I meet with him?
You met with him?
Yeah, I met with him, Larry Hubbard, Tuesday. He was on his way to speak at Wheaton College this weekend.
He's an inmate?
He was an inmate, but this will be his third time to speak at Wheaton College. And Larry said,
God's got his hand on him too.
Larry said we got to Angola one night, and Kyle was running everything, of course, and he said, you mind foregoing y'all's class tonight and we all go to worship? And Larry said, well, yeah, but I mean, y'all always worship after we leave. And he said, but would you just change your schedule? There's a guy here that you're going to want to worship with. He's a dear friend, and we get him twice a year. And it was John MacArthur. Yeah.
So that floated Larry's boat, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
I'm sure that was. Yeah, so he goes in there, and him and John MacArthur are yucking it up. So yeah, God has opened a lot of doors for him, and but the one I'm most excited about is him being so close with this guy that's developed this program and his interest, and then Natalie, I think that's her name, that runs the prison. She has a real interest. It's just. He's just a fountain of resource.
Yeah, if the success story could be the same as Angola.
Yeah.
If this program can do for community what their program has done inside the prison.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the real. I don't guess I'll get in trouble for saying this on this video since I doubt anybody watches it, but we're hoping to get the work release dorm, which is 150 beds, and make it into a faith-based dorm.
Wow.
That's the hope.
That'd be no problem at all for our God. Well, if it happens, he'll get it.
Yeah. Go from doing 12 every 12 weeks to 150 every 6 months, but it would be a much broader program.
Wow.
Talk about changing some families.
Yeah. So.
That's what excites me about it all, is what it can do to families and in our community. I mean, you get stronger families, you have a stronger community.
Yep.
So Joseph was 30 years old. It's been a long time coming, huh? 30 years old. We kind of ran through this. We started in chapter 37, and now we're here in 41, and almost to the end of it. And a lot of time has passed for Joseph, but he's still a relatively young man. He entered into the service of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Joseph left Pharaoh's presence and traveled throughout the land of Egypt, which is just a reiteration of what we read in that last little sentence. During the 7 years of abundance, the land produced outstanding harvest. So over and above what was normal, Joseph gathered all the excess food in the land of Egypt during the 7 years and put it in the cities. He put the food in every city from the fields around it. So, reiterating the fact that this is its own location. It's where the people are. So Joseph stored up grain in such abundance, like the sand of the sea, that he stopped measuring it because it was beyond measure. Okay, so what is the significance, people, of the sand of the sea and this? And yeah, it's all getting tied together here for the reader that, hey, what God is doing is the same thing. This is God's program at work here. And don't make no mistake about it, as numerous as the ancestors will be, this is what this abundance of harvest is. And what will be its purpose? To feed the nations that come to Egypt. Oh my goodness, that's what the purpose of Abraham's offspring is to be a nation of priests for all the. So we're left with all those things coming together. 2 sons were born to Joseph before the years of the famine arrived. Asenath, is that how you said that?
Yeah.
Daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, bore them to him. Joseph named the firstborn Manasseh. What's that mean? Let's see.
Making to forget.
Yeah, to forget, to cause to forget, to be forgotten. So he names them forgotten. And said, God has made me forget all my hardship and my whole family. Man, he has drawn a line and put the past is in the past. He's made peace and he's moving on. Now that sounds easy to do, doesn't it? In fact, years ago I taught I taught a thing called making peace with your past, and it's easy to say. Well, I didn't have many show up, but you can do it until the past shows up. Then it's hard to make peace again. It takes a special kind of person, and Joseph teaches us how to do that. So we want to hold that in mind. And the second son he named Ephraim, and said, God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. So Ephraim, if it'll come up.
He's fruitful. Making fruitful.
When I saw forget, Ephraim's fruit.
Yeah, there you go, fruitful. Of course, Ephraim becomes synonymous with the northern kingdom later, which is not very fruitful. So, then the 7 years of abundance in the land of Egypt came to an end, and the 7 years of famine began, just as Joseph had said. Only God had said it through Joseph. There was famine in every land, but in the whole land of Egypt there was food. When the whole land of Egypt was stricken with famine, the people cried out to Pharaoh for food. Pharaoh told all of Egypt, go to Joseph and do whatever he tells you. So Joseph, through the power of God that has given him the vision and the wherewithal to plan all of this, is even the Pharaoh is saying, I have no answer for you, but I've placed before you one who does have an answer. Now the famine had spread across the whole region, so Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold grain to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe in the land of Egypt. So it keeps talking about how severe it is. Every land came to Joseph in Egypt to buy grain, for the famine was severe in every land. Okay. So, all right. So what's happened in the midst of right before this famine comes? We have these 2 children born to Joseph. So there's fruitfulness in Joseph's.
So there's more years.
Yeah, yeah.
He was 30 years, and we're about 34 now.
Right, that's right. Yeah, very quickly we move through time.
Yeah.
But God has not only made Joseph powerful, he's the potentate. I mean, his hand is on everything and it's powerful. He's also blessed Joseph with offspring, his own fruitfulness, which later becomes very important as they leave out of that, well, as his brothers leave out. So we're going to stop there because we just really ran through that section so we could get to 42 and the rest of this with the brothers. To me, this is, would you agree, this is the most fantastic story ever written in the Bible, huh?
It is.
You go back to
Really
Genesis
wild.
every time you study anything.
It
What?
You go back to Genesis no matter where you are.
And no matter where you are.
Joseph is just.
But this particular story with him and his brothers
I mean,
is a masterful
you can take
piece
it
of
from
work.
the level of like typology and says like look at Jesus in the story. Like there's so many connections. The story itself
yeah.
like brings you to tears when he like sees his brothers again and stuff. Don't spoil it, but sorry.
Yeah.
But, like
I've never heard this before. I'm sure you've read this story.
I haven't heard it.
But Shelby likes to cry at stories like this, so that's why.
exactly.
Well, no, I do
And
cry. Just that is not why you forewarned me.
It's also really like theological at some points. Like talking about